Welcome back, everybody, to the Podecito podcast. I am your host, The Real 469. Thank you for coming along with me on this journey as we go episode by episode through our favorite show, collectively, of course. I'm talking, of course, about the incomparable Las Vegas. This week, we are on episode 10. We're in double digits. We made it to double digits. I know. Pop the champagne. Let's all go to Mystique. This episode is Dex and Violence, episode 10. This one debuted December 15th of 2003, and the reason it was December 15th instead of December 8th is because just like from the last episode, Las Vegas was preempted the week before for Fear Factor and Average Joe. NBC was really trying with that, but it obviously didn't quite take the way they wanted it to. This episode was directed by Guy Norman B., of course, written by Gary Scott Thompson, as well as Vanessa Reason. Vanessa Reason only has a few writing credits to her name. Her first writing credits, 7 episodes of our favorite show, Las Vegas. This is her first one, as well as Nevada State. She also did My Beautiful Laundrette, One Nation Under Surveillance, The Real McCoy, The Bitch is Back, and her last episode of Las Vegas was Like a Virgin from season 3. She also did, and you're never going to believe this, a few years after Las Vegas ended, she turned on us. She was a traitor because she wrote 4 episodes of that other show, Vegas, the one from 2012 with Michael Chiklis and Dennis Quaid. Yeah, that one. Oh, Vanessa. See, I have to call you Vanessa because Nessa would never do something like that. And her last credit as a writer was in 2014 for the Halle Berry show Extant. I've never heard of that, but that was her last credit. We are immediately, as we get started on this episode, going to whoosh straight down the Vegas Strip, and we see a sign for the Montecito World Poker Championship because they can't get the rights to the World Series of Poker, so it's the World Poker Championship. I imagine a lot of that has to do with, there's a few different rights. So while the World, and I don't even know if the World Poker Champion or the World Series of, the World Series of Poker was on NBC. It probably wasn't at the time because NBC had Poker After Dark, which is something different. World Series of Poker was on, I can't remember what channel it was on. It was on a cable channel, but I don't think it was owned by NBC. As well as the World Series of Poker was exclusive to the Palms, if I remember correctly. So they couldn't quite do that. We zoom in on past Craig Jesus Ferguson, one of the most recognizable poker players, at least at that time. And we see a young man who is quite nervous. He's sweating, in fact. He's so nervous. So the sweat is so profound that we get a really good, actually, rendering of one of his beads of sweat falling from his brow. It's reflective even. You don't see the camera. You see Jesus Ferguson. You see the rest of the table and the room around him as it falls from his brow onto the table. And we get to see our lovely Nessa telling all the dealers to shuffle up and deal. Now, this episode is going to feature some real-life poker players. We're not going to go over all their names, because just the ones I kind of remember. But we get to see Nessa for the first time. And luckily, this episode is not going to be the only time. We're going to see more of Nessa. Yay! We then cut to a magic show, and we get to see someone levitating a woman, and the guy claps his hands, and the woman disappears. And Sam and Mary are impressed. Sam specifically is impressed. Mary, I imagine, has seen it before. The woman's supposed to come out of a pyramid, and she doesn't come out of the pyramid. Why didn't she come out of the pyramid? The guy's looking for her. Where is she? Sam, she says she's supposed to reappear, right? And she is not there. And the people are confused, and so are we as we cut to the intro. This is a great episode already. You got a couple of different elements already at play. You get to see a couple of, at this point, not made, I don't even think poker players have ever really been major celebrities. In the poker world, you get to see some people that if you know anything about poker, you've seen them, specifically Craig Jesus Ferguson. He's just the most camera unique of the poker players, specifically at this time, that they probably could get. And you get to see a mystery. What happened to the magic woman? Where did the magic woman go? Was the magic woman familiar to you? She should be, but we'll get to that in a minute when we get to that. As we cut back from the credits, Mary is having a devil of a time wrangling all the people who are mad at what happened at the magic show. And they managed to they're getting their money back. Mary says, you will get your money back, which is something that I didn't even know you could do for something like that, for a show like that, unless it was an absolute catastrophe. I didn't know you could. I would imagine, I don't know if that's still the case. Like, if you go to Penn and Teller's show and Penn's supposed to make Teller come back and Teller doesn't come back, are you able to get your money back? I don't even know if you're allowed to do that. Like, is that possible? Maybe, but for the sake of the show, we are. And Mary talks to Danny about it, and they are going to try to work it out. Then we see the young man who sweat earlier. He's very nervous. He's still a little not the smoothest guy. He drops off his glass to a waitress, and he runs into the smoothest guy. He runs into Mike. This is a good time to talk about that young man who runs into Mike. The young, nervous gentleman, the young, nervous chap, is an actor by the name of Elon Gold. Elon Gold, his first credit was in a thing with Shelley Long called Basic Values, Sex, Shock, and Censorship in the 90s, where he played Howard Stern. He would then go on to play Howard Stern a couple more times, specifically for Celebrity Deathmatch. The thing I remember him most from, that I've seen him in past this, was he was in the short-lived Pamela Anderson sitcom. Do you remember that sitcom? Called Stacked. It was him, Pamela Anderson, what's her name from the newest version of Hairspray? The daughter from the newest version of Hairspray. And Christopher Lloyd. It wasn't a great show, but it was background watchable. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a great show, it was background watchable. He played the uptight guy. Elon Gold really is a comedian. If you go to any of his social media, you'll see that he's a stand-up comedian. He usually plays goofy, as a stand-up guy. He usually is doing more funny stuff, including on his IMDb. His latest thing that we've seen him in was Curb Your Enthusiasm in 2021 for 3 episodes as the head of Hulu. That's Elon Gold's resume, but he's usually a funny guy, not in this episode. In this episode, you won't laugh one bit with anything that he says in this episode. And much like Ken Marino, that's fine, because he definitely pulls the nervous guy off as well. He runs into Mike, and we get a little exposition of how Mike knows this guy. Ben Pierce is the character's name. They went to MIT together.
Ben Pierce.
Mike!
I thought that was you.
Oh, man, long time.
I never thought I'd run into you in Vegas. Frankly, I never thought I'd run into you anywhere outside of the engineering building.
Yeah, MIT, right?
Right.
Wow.
Meanwhile, we learn a bit that Ben won his seat in the World Poker Championship after he lost his job. Mike asked him, well, if you lost your job, how did you get in? Well, he won his seat online, is the story that he's telling Mike. He then quickly asked Mike, or not quickly, but he then nonchalantly asked Mike if Mike is still playing poker, because he used to be a pretty good poker player. And Mike very quickly shuts that question down. Listen.
So what about you? You still play poker? You were pretty good back in college.
No, I quit right after I moved back here.
Right. Mike, that's an answer that you give if there was an issue in the past. And to me, it sounds like there was an issue in the past, but we will find out a bit later. Also, in that confrontation or conversation, it was interesting hearing Mike justify working in the casino. There was as a valet, as opposed to being an engineer.
I didn't know casinos had engineers on staff.
They don't. I'm a head valet here. Yeah, I never liked working in an office, handcuffed to a computer, so I gotta work with people, man, not machines. Besides, you'd be surprised how often my engineering degree comes in handy here. And the money's great.
There's more gravitas to being an engineer, obviously, Most people wouldn't think that being a valet makes a lot of money. I don't know how much money they would make nowadays. I imagine that they used to, for sure, make a lot of, especially straight cash money with tips and everything. So it probably used to be, if it's not still, I don't know if it might still be, but the structure of valet services in casinos has changed a lot in 20 years. So it may not be anymore. But because I remember the last time I was there for the Morris Day concert, I didn't see a whole lot of, it was mostly younger guys. And I don't even remember if there were any guys that were in their 30s-ish, right? And before that, you used to see guys in their 30s, maybe 40s, because it was a good enough living that they had no problem doing it. And probably the hours were flexible. It was probably very close to being an Uber driver that makes great tips, but you don't have to put much damage on your car. You're driving other people's cars. So it was probably Mike having to justify it makes little sense, especially considering that we all know Mike makes a ton of money with being a valet, and especially the level of valet that he is at the casino and dealing with the high rollers and celebrities, etc. But it might be rejustified in the new age of Vegas, and I don't know how valets work now. If you are a valet, reach out to me and let me know. We then cut to Danny sitting in an office. I assume this is his office. I don't know that we have ever seen Danny in an office or will ever see Danny in an office again until he moves up the ranks of the casino. I know that he did get injured while we were doing this, so this might be one of those scenes, because if you look, he only stands up to shake their hands and then sits right back down, and he's sitting down through the entirety of this scene. So the injury might have played a part in it, and they had to make something up. But every other time I remember seeing Danny, including after this episode, I don't think he had an office. I think he was always in the surveillance pit. So this might just be a thing that they did spur of the moment because they had to, which makes total sense. Meanwhile, Mary brings in the group from SASSC, and we learn that
it's pronounced sassy.
Sassy.
And we learn that from two of this week's guests. The first guest is Lorna Scott. Lorna Scott has been a working actor for quite a long time. Her first credited role was as a social worker in Hero in 1983. She's been on a whole bunch of things from Grace Under Fire to Designing Women. She got Las Vegas in 2003, obviously. And her IMDb is stuffed with different credits on different sitcoms. A lot of stuff set in suburbia, like the suburban roles, the casting director roles, teacher, mom, stuff like that. Her last credited role that you can see now was in Home in 2020 as Mrs. Flay, and she also has an untitled project that's in production right now. That's Lorna Scott. Her co-star in this scene and for the rest of the episode is Kevin McDonald. You've seen him for decades, seen and heard him from decades. Born in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. He was a drama major in college until they kicked him out because he could only do comedy. Then he meets Dave Foley. They join a troupe, who then joins another troupe and becomes the Kids in the Hall, and this guy is everywhere from there. His first credited role was in Osgood in 1986, of course. You know him from Kids in the Hall. We have to give him his props. I also have to give him his props on this, and I loved Kids in the Hall for what it's worth. Kids in the Hall was great. I thought Kids in the Hall was a close second to SNL. Back in the 90s, only because SNL in the 90s was so good, so Kids in the Hall was just a close second to it. The reboot is good, too. I like the reboot, actually. The reboot is really good avant-garde stuff. Like, they still have it. I have to give Kevin McDonald his... We're giving all the co-stars their flowers, of course. I have to give Kevin McDonald his flowers for this, because I have had this piece of audio from his appearance on the Drew Carey Show stuck in my head since 1998, and it goes a little something like this.
Ready for the song, guys?
Oh, we hate him, yes, we hate him, we will hate him, till they box him up and crate him. We will hate him.
You're welcome. Now it's stuck in your head. Most people might know his voice more than they know his face, especially the younger crowd. He was in Lilo and Stitch. He's Pleakley in Lilo and Stitch. The little thin alien that's always in drag, that's him. And you've seen him on all the Lilo and Stitch stuff. I assume he's probably in the new quote-unquote live-action reboot. His latest credit is in Diener 89 as Principal Gil. That just came out this year. That's Kevin McDonald. We learn that the Society of American Swizzle Stick Collectors have a bit of a problem. You see, they want to make sure that their Sassy convention, it's pronounced Sassy, is up to date and has the latest in security needs for their convention. Now, immediately, Loretta is smitten with Danny, and you can tell, you can look on her face. She wants, this is the curse. Look, you wanted Danny to be the sexiest, most handsomest, most irresistible man in all of Las Vegas. That does not just stop at the Marys and the Sams and the Nessas. Oh no, that's the sassy VPs as well. They want them some McCoy. And look, who can blame them? She sees what she wants. That's how she got to the VP ship. She saw what she wanted and she went and got it. Keep that in mind for later in this episode. But in any event, this is a funny scene that really is good for this episode because of the tone that we're going to get in a little bit later. And this is so they have a couple of different degrees of lightheartedness in this episode. There's the super serious, there's the in and out lightheartedness with, if you don't think about it too hard, there's some ramifications in there, and then there's just the plain old silly. And this is just the plain old silliness, and it's great. The sassy president is talking about his George W. Bush swizzle stick, which needs to be protected at all costs because it's one of the last swizzle sticks that George W. Bush used before he jumped onto the wagon before he became president. Mr. Monty McClure, that's Kevin McDonald's character's name, says that it came from Addie's Texas Grill. I looked it up. Yes, I did. That's the job. There is no Addie's Texas Grill. What there is an Addie's Diner in Midland, Texas, but it doesn't serve alcohol. So, I get the point. That's very close, again with the details, but not quite. Anyway, he wants to make sure that everything is set for the convention because tensions runs high because the sassy members, they can get a little out of hand. You know, the riots at the 98 convention, right? The Lessa said, we all saw the news footage of that. That got out of hand very fast. All Danny has to do is say, okay, you've got it. You've got your extra security. We'll put some extra we will put some extra guards in there. And they are ushered out very quickly by Mary, who, here's the thing about Mary in this episode with the sassy members. Her facial expressions are great. Her reactions because she's in all the sassy scenes in this episode, and her reactions, she outshines Danny. Danny's still trying to play it cool in the face. Mary she's going to give you some cutaways. So watch those as we keep going in this episode. We then get to Ed at the dressing room of the magicians, and he knocks, and they let him in. And you hear a thick Russian accent. You also hear some Russian music. I forgot to talk about this before when we saw the original scene, but I'm going to talk about it now. There's a musical cue in that scene with the magic and everything, and the woman disappears. The song that plays on all incarnations is a song called Showbiz Plus by Dieter Reith. Like Keith, but with an R. That's on all versions. The music that plays in this scene as we open the door on the DVD is a song called Troika, Troika, parentheses Russian, by the Dance Crusaders. On Peacock and Amazon, it's just some random song. Ed comes in, and the male magician is all smiles. He looks like he's just had the show of his life, even though people have had to ask for refunds from said show of his life. And he introduces Ed to Olga.
You know, Olga the cockatoos.
Olga, the what?
The bird wrangler from the show.
Oh, the bird wrangler.
Which is a good time to talk about Olga, the bird wrangler. The bird wrangler's name, or the actress's name who plays the bird wrangler, is in fact Olga. Olga Vinelner was born in the USSR in the 70s. Her first credited role was in something called Screen 2 as Lena in 94. She did a couple video game spots, including SOCOM series as a few different people. She got Las Vegas. She did General Hospital for 12 episodes. The soap opera Stars Strike Again. A lot of her credits are in Russian, so I'm not even going to try. Her last thing that you've seen her in an American is as an American in Love and Monsters in 2020. And she gives this she's great in this episode. She gives this fantastic speech about the two cockatoos, Horse and Carriage. You see, Horse and Carriage, well, she can do it better than me.
And these are Vanka and Vera's famous cockatoos, Horse and Carriage. First pair called Love and Marriage. Marriage died of gout.
Gout.
Love ate marriage's legs.
Marriage over.
She's fantastic. That scene is fantastic. That explanation is fantastic. So fantastic, she gets a smack on the bum from the male magician. Now, the male magician is Vanko, don't you know? This show is Vanko and Vera. That wasn't Vera. That was Olga. Vera's the one who disappeared. The one who plays Vanko is an actor by the name of Sherman Howard. Sherman Howard's first credit was, look at this, soap opera, General Hospital again. He also has some Star Trek credits, including Star Trek Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Keep that in mind for later in this episode as well. He's also a prolific working actor. You've seen him in a whole bunch of stuff. The last thing you've seen him in was co-starring with future Las Vegas star Tom Selleck in Blue Bloods in 2021 for an episode. That's Sherman Howard. Sherman Howard has the full undivided attention of Big Ed DeLine, and that's something that you don't necessarily want, but he is in such cloud nine. He is so euphoric right now that he is playing it entirely cool, as Ed keeps asking him, how does a trick work? You have to tell me how the trick works because you have to find your wife. Where is your wife? What happened? How did the trick work? And Vanko is telling Ed, I cannot give away the secrets. And Ed is saying that it looks a little bit suspicious, that Vanko doesn't want to give up any secrets, doesn't want to say anything. And Vanko is playing it super-de-duper cool because, well, we'll find out why. But a good reason why we can see that he's playing it cool is Olga's there. Obviously, him and Olga have some sort of relationship. He smacked her ass, she gave it, ooh. And as he said she can assist him, Olga gives this look and this clap. She is super excited. She is super into it. She seems like she's a true believer. And that may come back to haunt Olga a bit later on. But Vanko is telling Ed, listen.
Vanko is pure of heart. The magic depends upon it. I have nothing to hide.
So then tell me, how does the trick work? Tell me.
But he won't tell Ed the trick. And Ed is getting incredibly frustrated. And this scene I love. Because Vanko tells Ed about a couple of basic tenets of magic.
In magic, there are 5 basic categories. Appearance, disappearance, transformation, levitation, and sewing.
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 Okay, sewing. And?
And in this trick, there is no sewing involved.
And the look, Ed is not of love. The look Ed gives Vanko as he grabs him by the shoulder, almost by the nape of the neck. We've seen Ed get angry, obviously, Groundhog Summer. We've seen Ed attack people, obviously. We've seen Ed defend people. But this is the first time that I think we've come this close to Ed just straight up backhanding somebody, just straight up smacking him. I feel like Ed was this close to going back to not even Sonny Corleone, because Sonny Corleone would have super beat him up. But I think Ed was going back to, he was about to smack him. He wanted to smack him. He just wanted to smack, he wanted to just give him, he just wanted to pop him. He wanted to cup his hand and pop him right across the eardrum. Don't do that. I didn't tell you how to do it. Don't do that. But he just wanted to pop Vanko one time, but he leaves instead. And that's probably best for Vanko, certainly the way Vanko is seen in Olga's eyes, because she is just doting over Vanko. But let's let the dealer shuffle the deck for a second, and we'll be right back. For the freshest and in-depth reactions and analysis of all the goings-on in hip-hop, sports, poetry, and everything else, go to Poetics Reacts on YouTube. Hosted by world-famous poet and chef Mr. Poetic, Poetics Reacts gives you points of view you never thought of and never thought of saying out loud. Go to YouTube and search Poetics Reacts or tinyurl.com/PoeticsReacts now. That's PoetixReacts. And leaves it, walks down this hallway. This is the first of, I want to say, 87 times we're going to see this stupid hall. Oh, they tried to dress it up. We see this hallway quite a few different times in the event. Ed talks to Danny about it, and they're going to look into some things. Ben Pierce comes in to Mystique for that dinner that Mike talked to him about when they met up a little bit earlier. And unfortunately, Ben Pierce has busted out of the poker tournament. We got a music cue here as well as Ben Pierce comes into Mystique. If you're watching on the DVD, you're going to hear a song called Narco Trafico, Trafico, not two F's, by Latin Soul Syndicate. That's a great song. Add that to your playlist. That's a terrific song. If you're watching on Peacock and Amazon, they cover it up. It's a song that's close to it, but it's a production song. Couldn't hear it. It mangles. It's not. It's a production song that they layer on top of it. Not the worst layer job, but it's something close to it, but it's not quite it. Ben is crestfallen, to say the least. He is not depressed, but he's definitely scared. There's something up with him. And Mike is trying to cheer him up. He's saying, hey, you won your seat in the tournament. You're doing better than most people do. And listen, I've played in poker tournaments before. They're not easy. They are not easy. And Ben says that luck shouldn't have anything to do with it. We'll get back to that. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about it now. He says that he busted out, he's playing on skill, and luck should have nothing to do with it. And he was talking about, when he talked to Mike earlier, about how he played online, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on too, where he's talking about his online play. Online play is wildly different from playing with a human being across the table from you. Wildly. There's some differences, but there's also some similarities. Him saying that he played online and he played based on skill and that's how he won, okay. But also, people play online not based on skill also. People do some dumb stuff when they're playing online. People will go all in with very little to nothing, and sometimes they end up winning just because of the luck of the draw. Luck still has an element to it. I like playing cards personally because that is one of the games where there is more skill involved than just random luck. It helps to know a thing or two about the card game that you're playing. You can control some different aspects of it. Talked about when we were playing blackjack, where you're seated at the table has something to do with it. What you do when you're seated at the table has something to do with it. Poker is very much the same thing. There's a lot of you involved in your outcome. A lot more than, say, roulette or slots. That's why I hate, roulette is a lot less. But slots is even worse. Slots, you're just pressing a button in slots. It's just random whatever. That's why I can't sit in a slot machine for too long. My brain will hurt. Cards is engaging with the mind. And it's not just skill. It's not. It is never just skill. I have played against guys who I could tell only played online. And I could tell that they could only play it online because they had tells up the wazoo. And they couldn't figure, they just, in front of an actual person or multiple actual people, and yeah, it was a wildly different thing. Ben should know this, and even playing online, he should know the erratic way people play online, even in tournaments, which is actually a different kind of randomness than you would get at a regular poker table, because at a regular poker table, it might seem random to you, but in a tournament setting, a lot of times what the other player is doing, they are thinking about what they're doing. They're not necessarily just going all in just to go all in, because it's actually costing them money to be in that tournament most of the time. So they're not going to play exactly like that, but they are going to bluff. They are going to go with luck. They are going to play you versus the cards. They are going to do a whole bunch of different things that it astonishes me that as somebody I'm not even a well-seasoned poker player. I just know about poker enough, and I've played poker in real life enough to know Ben maybe shouldn't have even been in this tournament. The way he's talking about poker. In any event, as Ben is acting nervous, the nervousness gets ratcheted up as we see somebody walk in a casual suit outfit, and he puts his hand on his shoulder.
It's a rough break.
Who's that?
Just a guy from the tournament. Listen, Mike, I can't. I don't think I can have dinner here.
Don't worry about it, it's on me.
No, it's not. I can't. I gotta go. I'm sorry.
And he gives this smile that's clearly intimidating, especially with the shadows. The way they've got this guy's face shadowed and everything, Ben is very, very scared of this gentleman. Let's talk a bit about this gentleman. The actor's name is Patrick Kilpatrick, I know. My captain is Patrick Kilpatrick. Patrick Kilpatrick's first credit is Only You and Me as Steve. I don't have a date for that, but he also did The Edge of Night for 14 episodes. You really saw him in The Toxic Avenger in 1984. He has made a career of playing the intimidating guy as well as a cop. Often shady, often on the take, but, a tough type of character like that. He co-starred with future co-star of Las Vegas, Tom Selleck, in Cross Trail Fire for a TV movie. He did this as Louis Ambrose. Now, Louis Ambrose, that's this guy's name. We're going to find out that a little bit later. Louis Ambrose is a recurring character. He's not a guest star. Why? Because he's going to come back for another episode in Season 4, White Christmas. So Louis Ambrose is not a VIP guest star candidate. He is a recurring star. He has made, like I said, a career of being the absolute tough guy. The latest thing you've seen him in is Nessie as Brad last year. He's got 9 things in post-production. He and his shadow and his face in the shadow and his I'm going to beat you up when teacher's not looking smile has scared Ben Pierce off dramatically and has got Mike's attention, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. In the meantime, Danny's in surveillance. He's looking over footage from the magic show, and him and Ed are going to go over things and see what they can pick up. One of the things I like about this scene here, as they're talking about the surveillance tape, is they're actually going to give us some exposition about video IQ. And we might have heard a little bit about that the last episode, but we're going to hear about it a little bit more here as they explain that the video IQ, which is the square box over somebody who's walking through the casino, and we're going to see that a lot in future episodes.
So, video IQ uses a combination of both heat signature and gait, right?
Right.
So there's no way she could have just walked out of here without the video IQ picking her up, whether she was disguised, changed her clothing, anything.
This picks Ed's ear up, and he tells Danny to look for something on wheels at all. And this is a good collaboration scene between the two of them. Danny and Ed talk about how it takes 72 hours for Vera to be seen as a missing person, so they can't call Metro. That is a lie. That is a myth. That is a myth perpetrated by Hollywood to give a ticking clock to a problem just like this. That is a myth. I looked it up. There is no time period before somebody can be classified or reported as a missing person. That is a complete and total myth. And by the way, my dad explained this to me. He's a former cop. He explained this to me because guess what can happen in 72 hours? any and everything. Any and everything can happen in 72 hours. So there is no actual time clock. That's just a made-up thing for Hollywood. We then cut to Nessa and Mike about to leave for the night, and then a car drives up, screeches up, and tosses a body out the back door and then screeches off. It just happens to be Ben Pierce, and it just happens to be in front of Mike. That almost classified this for Montecito Magic, but I don't know if I want to classify that as Montecito Magic because of the dark nature that Ben Pierce is in the situation that he's in. But maybe I can convince myself by the time we get to the end of this episode. Mike takes Ben Pierce to his room and gets him cleaned up with some ice and stuff, and he talks about how Ed has the best security force in Las Vegas, but Ben Pierce says no security, no cops, because that'll just cause more trouble. Then we get a little bit of exposition, not a little bit, we get the exposition on Ben Pierce and how after losing his job, he didn't win his seat in the World Poker Championship. He was granted his entry fee by Louis Ambrose. And Louis Ambrose is going to do that for this. The amount that he has to give Louis Ambrose if he won was ridiculous. He would have had to repay the $20,000 entry fee as well as half his winnings. So he would have had to, if I remember correctly at the beginning, they said it was for $5 million. He would have had to give Ambrose $250 million plus $250 million $20,000. What? No. 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 That's worse than you get taxed for winning the lottery. The government only takes 50%. That's terrible. That's terrible. Just stay home. What? Just ignore that email. Just be like, no, thanks you, but no. Just don't agree to the terms and say, thank you, but no thank you. I'll pass. You know what I mean? And he doesn't even say that he was pressured into doing it. He just says that Ambrose said he would do it. Now, mind you, as we find out later, Ambrose is a bully. But he could just not, and he could just say, no, thanks, I'm fine, I'm good. No, thank you. Right? And if he wins the tournaments the way that he says he wins the tournament, he says that he's never finished lower than 5th in any of the tournaments that he's entered, he doesn't need this anyway. Keep practicing, work yourself up, and then you could earn your... At that point, I'm pretty sure it was at this point. If it wasn't at this point, it was a year or two after this. It was very close to this time period where the actual World Series of Poker, you actually could start buying your way into the tournament. Once they started getting TV deals, etc., there were not just through the World Series of Poker, but it was through the World Series of Poker and its affiliate sponsors also gave away, but had as a prize in different tournaments a seat at the World Series of Poker at different championship games. So the idea that he had to do it this way is very, very short-sighted, but maybe there's a reason for that. And Ben Pierce says that he doesn't want to drag Mike into this, but Mike offers to give up some of his, or I don't even know how much of his savings to get it done. We cut to the magic act, and Vanko has flowers and a hat and the magic rings that he can't separate, and the look Vera gives, not Vera, Vera's not here yet. We've seen Vera for half a second. The look that Olga gives Vanko is a look, gentlemen, that I hope you never see in your life, but I fear every man needs to see at least once in their lives. It's the look of a woman falling out of love with you. It is the look of a woman not seeing you as a man anymore. Not seeing you as the man she thought you were anymore. It is not a thing that should be viewed lightly. It is not a look I recommend that you see. But it is a look that I fear. That's why I said fear. Every man at some point in his life is going to have to see just through his adventures. In any event, the show goes badly. People get up and leave. And clearly, Vanko doesn't know what he's doing. And Olga's about to leave as Ed comes into the dressing room. And Ed shows off his Russian-speaking skills.
Excuse me, nothing.
В чем дело?
Дело в том, что мужчина, которого я так любила, меня не любит, а любит не кого-нибудь, а свою жену! Only in Vegas!
Look, in today's age, that's not only in Vegas. You can be in love with a man who's in love with his wife, and everybody knows about it too. Like, look, look, polyamory is a thing now. Look, they could have. If this were in 2024, they could have worked this out. Anyway, Ed goes into Vanko's dressing room, and we see some pictures of Vanko and Vera on stage and in love with each other. And that's interesting. I tried to find the music for this scene, but I couldn't. I'm pretty sure this is just production music. Vanko is super sad. Vanko has to finally admit to Mr. Ed that...
Please, never, ever call me Mr. Ed.
Oh, excuse me. Vanko has to finally admit to Ed that he doesn't know how Vera's portion of the trick works. That things have been bad between Vanko and Vera for a while, to the point that he does his part of the trick, she does her part of the trick, and that's how things worked. And it seems to be fine. Now, what that does is that reiterates the section in the beginning between Vanko and Ed when Vanko was talking about how he'd heard the talk about how Vera's the real magician. It sounds like she is. The fact that you never even looked at how the trick is done sounds like she is or was curious about it, whatever. It sounds like she is the real magician. And it sounds like he's not. I don't know how they got linked up. We don't get that far into it. But it sounds like Vera's the one with the actual talent. And so Vanko talks to Ed about how they've been separated for a while, but Vanko wanted to re-up the contract at the Montecito. And guess what? If he wanted to re-up the contract at the Montecito, but things weren't good between the two of them, even with the mystique of Vanko and Vera means a happy marriage between people, and that was the whole commotion with people getting their money back. And I think that's why they were able to get their money back, is to assuage the people from saying my honeymoons, or although somebody did yell my honeymoon is ruined. Even with that, Vera, obviously, that's a bad situation to be in. That's the professional equivalent to me of you break up with somebody, but you're both on the lease for another 7-8 months. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing where, I still have to see them. I still have to be around them. I still have to sleep in the same bed, or I share a kitchen and a shower and a garage with. We still have to do this for 8 more months because we can't get out of the lease. Or you break up with somebody, or you want to break up with somebody, but then they want to renew the lease. Is what that's the professional equivalent to, actually. And so you just take off, which makes total sense. Why wouldn't you? So we cut to the Sassy Convention. And as we get into the Sassy Convention, if you're watching on the DVD, musical note, obviously, the music is Tres Besitos, parentheses, cha-cha-cha, by Los Cubaztecas. Los Cubaztecas. Cubaztecas. And if you're watching on Amazon and Peacock, obviously, of course, it is production music. Yes, it is. Mary is watching this. We see some Elvis impersonators through there. She's got a swizzle stick herself that she's chomping on, and her reactions are great. And we see Loretta as she talks to some people who are looking at a swizzle stick collection, that also is a working chess set. And Mary's come a long way from the Weekend of Weddings, hasn't she? to wrangling the swizzle stick collectors. But listen, look, I'm not even gonna talk trash about the swizzle stick collectors. Everybody's got a collection, right? Everybody's got something that I'm doing a podcast about a show from 2003. All right, I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. I am a nerd. I have action figures everywhere. I am a nerd. I have collectibles. I am a nerd. So I'm not. And listen, I'm such a nerd and such a collector that I have to stop myself from starting other collections. So I get it. If there's something that you're into, I understand. So everybody's got to have their thing. And who knows, at this point, this could have been the next hottest thing. You know, this could have been the adult version of Pokemon. Who knew, right? And if I looked it up, I would probably find some swizzle stick collections somewhere, all right, that are probably worth something. Stamp collectors are a thing, all right? So I have no qualms against the sassy people, but this is pretty funny. In any event, Kevin McDonald, Monty, is coming to Mary, and he has a ticking time clock of his own.
It's gone.
What? What's gone?
My prized George W. Swizzle. It is gone. You have to help me find it before the collection judging begins.
It's because the collection judging is how they decide who's going to be the president of Sassy. And he starts breaking down. And Mary, with the great comic timing of Nikki Cox, just pats his back like a whimpering child. And she is looking away in just, I don't even know what you would call that expression. Boredom, not boredom, I don't even know what you would call that. Exasperation. Mild exasperation. Minute exasperation. She pats his back.
Why don't you take a little break?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm gonna stretch the legs, wash the face, refocus.
There you go.
I assume you're interested in large amounts of money.
It's Vegas, who isn't?
If you like the podcast and you want to help support it, you can send a Cash App, join our Patreon or Subscribe Star, or buy us a coffee. Just search The Podecito on all those platforms. In the meantime, we see Ed and Mike is coming in with a leather jacket, a cool ass leather jacket. Mike is looking fresh to death in his leather jacket. He's the coolest guy in Vegas, obviously, don't you know? And he asks Ed, "Hey, what do you know about Louis Ambrose?" And just the word Louis Ambrose, the words Louis Ambrose, gets Ed's hackles all in a hackle. Gets Ed in a bit of a unfriendly mood, and he gets in Mike's face and he tells Mike, "Listen, Ambrose is a dirty, rotten scum." And Mike tells him, "I think he's here for the tournament." And Ed says, No. This is how dangerous he is. No. Because if he was, somebody will be fired. You stay away from him. You have your friends stay away from him. You stay away from him. And we whoosh down to the casino floor where Mike is talking to Nessa about the situation. And he tells Nessa, and Nessa asks, "Hey, listen, if Ed said don't go, then why are you going?" And they come back to that damn hallway. But this time, they've dressed it up a little bit different. They're doing something with it. They're trying to make this hallway work as much as they can for themselves in this episode, right? They go back to that hallway, and Mike gives the exposition about how he might not have graduated had it not been for Ben Pierce.
Night before graduation, and partying got a little out of hand, and the police hauled me in.
The police?
The police hauled me in. So I used my one phone call trying to reach a friend back at the dorm, and everyone was out celebrating except Pierce. Now, I've lived down the hall 4 years, never spoke to this guy, and there he was, bailing me out. I swore then that if he ever needed anything, I'd be there. Now that marker's come due.
And I have to be honest with you, I know a couple people in my life who have done that for me. Who they didn't have to do anything for me. We barely talked to each other for however long we knew each other in whatever situation that was. And when I needed something and wasn't even necessarily even asking them, they just came through. It might have been something small but necessary at the time, but they came through. And they didn't have to. They really didn't have to. So I get Mike's need, his drive to help Ben Pierce here. I do. And to not just clear that debt to get it off your conscience, but to thank the person for doing something for you that they never had to do. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a story. Remember how I talked in the first episode about how the show Las Vegas came to me when I was in a just terrible point in my life? That point in my life, I had no place to stay. And a classmate of mine, who I really barely talked to, he was a friend of my best friend. We in the 4 years that we went to high school together, we hung around similar places, like the video game room. We hung around the similar like nerd spaces or whatever, but we weren't close. We weren't really friends. He came through for me when I needed a place to stay. I ended up staying with him and his family and becoming like a brother to him and his family for a couple years after that, around the time I discovered Las Vegas. And to the point where his little sister and I remember, I'll never forget this memory. His little sister, the one show that she watched that wasn't on Disney Channel at the time was Las Vegas, after she caught me watching the Hero episode, the season 4 finale with Sam and the trunk and everything. She got hooked immediately. And all summer long, she kept asking me when Las Vegas was coming back, and we ended up watching season 5 together. I made a Las Vegas fan. The one thing that she watched that wasn't Hannah Montana was Las Vegas. So I get that drive to want to help a person that helped you out when they did not have to, and may have gone above and beyond even when they didn't have to do anything. They could have just not picked up the phone. And that's one of the reasons why Mike is one of the coolest guys in Vegas. So we cut to the lobby of the theater, which I'm guessing is close to Mystique, and we'll figure that out a little. Matter of fact, I know it is because Mary passes Delinda as she's on her way to Mystique. And Mary basically tells the box office to keep hustling the tickets for the Vanka and Vero show, even though they're not exactly sure how the show's going to go off this evening. Delinda goes into Mystique to eat with Ed, and I like this scene too. Music cue here, but slightly different. If you're watching on the DVD, it's a production song. If you're watching on Amazon and Peacock, it's a different production song. It's a worse production song. The DVD production song is better. This scene is great. We get to see a good father-daughter scene between Ed and Delinda, and they just have conversations that adult kids have with their parents. As Delinda talks about she's going to go see Vanka and Vera on her honeymoon, and then Ed starts talking about honeymoons and weddings and who you're going to marry. And
I just, marriage, suddenly, I just never heard you talk about that normal kind of stuff. Is it something you've been thinking about?
Do not try and fix me up with anyone.
I don't. That's your mother's department.
Besides, I know who you want me to marry.
I want you to marry whoever it is that makes you happy. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Danny.
Danny? I hate the guy.
that is 1 point in the column for the DD shippers. That is 1 point in your column that Ed is putting his 2 cents in the ring for Danny to get with Delinda or be with Delinda, and Delinda acknowledging that fact, but that's 1 point in your column. I'm not even going to take it. I retract the but. I'm not even going to take that away. We then move on to a scene where Monty and Mary and Danny are walking through the casino floor, and Monty is all shook up because he can't find his W swizzle stick. He's got another swizzle in his hand. Is probably his comfort blanket swizzle stick, but this one isn't in a case. The George W swizzle was in a case. And Monty gives his thoughts on the caper with the swizzle sticks. And he starts giving some exposition on Loretta and why she might be suspect number one for his swizzle stick.
I've been thinking it over, Mr. McCoy. Thinking, analyzing. I know who took it. Loretta Harris.
Loretta, the sassy vice president?
Loretta's been after my job ever since I took office. Sassy presidency automatically goes to the member with the best collection. Once I got a hold of that George W. Swizzle, I knew I could ride the Bush name straight to the president's office. But without it, I'm afraid I haven't got a chance.
This is a great... Here's one of the reasons why this scene and this through line, this C plot... Is it the C plot? It's the C plot, actually. It's the C plot. I wanted to call it a B plot, but it's the C plot. Goes so well because it is such a... It's a great parody. It's a great send-up. Not even necessarily parody. It is, but not in the broad sense of a parody. It is a send-up of the crime procedural show, which Las Vegas is at least partially a crime procedural. So something happens every week, and the crew has to figure it out and solve it. Ba-dum-bum. And they're on NBC, and they're known for the crime procedurals, all the laws and orders, right? So it's a great send-up. And, we've seen the interrogation room scenes, etc. It's a great send-up of that trope on an episode where they don't even really go into that, right? Like, we have the Ambrose stuff, but there's no interrogation scene with Ambrose. There's none of that, right? And the B plot, there's not really the interrogation scenes. There's the interviewing the spouse of the missing person scene, but not really like an interrogation scene. But we're going to get a good one with this swizzle stick plot, and Danny and Mary take off because they want to be as far away from Monty as possible. But keep an eye out from what Monty was talking about. As we don't even whoosh through Vegas. We slowly drive on a dash cam of somebody's car through a slight inlet in Vegas as Mike goes to meet Louis Ambrose at his, let's just call it a lair. It's a lair. It's all he's missing is the cat that the white cat that he's petting as he turns around and says, "I've been expecting you, Mr. Cannon." That's all he's missing. It's complete with when he asks Mike, "Who told you I could give you a loan?" He opens a cigar box and there is a big, fancy looking gun in that cigar box. And Mike is groveling, asking for a little bit more time to help pay it off. And here's where Ambrose becomes a bully. Or not becomes. Here's where Ambrose shows his bulliness. He keeps upping the price. He keeps bullying the price up from $20,000 that Pierce owes him to $30,000 and then $40,000. Because every time Mike talks, it's another $10,000. And all Mike is asking for is just one more day so he can get it together and give it to him, right? That seems like a reasonable request. And even the most unreasonable places, the most unreasonable bill collectors will often do that. Or if they see that you're making a donation of some kind, then they will actually hold that in good standing with you, at least for a little bit, and say he's at least trying, right? Obviously, Ambrose is not that kind of guy. Ambrose just keeps upping the price so it gets to $40,000, and Mike leaves gobsmacked. He didn't think that would happen. You didn't? You're dealing with a loan shark. You didn't think that would happen? What did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen, Mike? You're a very smart man. What did you think was going to happen? Because I knew something like that would happen. And if I were in that situation, I don't think that would be the thing that I do. Now, mind you don't want to run from the guy, right? But probably don't go until you have it all, right? Probably don't, you know what I mean? And especially if it's only going to take another day, I don't know that was the best scenario. In any event, we cut to Mike and Ben coming up with a plan. Ben wants to take the money that Mike has and double it up because he knows of another poker tournament that's playing tonight at the Palms. And it's all with pros. Pros don't play like amateurs, you see. Pros play like pros.
Pros play rationally by the odds. They have to. In the long run, that's the only way you can win. That's my game, Mike, the numbers game.
Yes, pros play like pros. And they also, at times, appear to play like amateurs. You might think the whole half of poker is bluffing and I don't even know what the percentage would be. Probably a good portion of the game. I would say probably half. I would split. It's probably half. So 25% of poker probably is bluffing. 25% is catching bluffs. Is figuring out what the other person is doing at that table. And even if you do that, you can still have I not told you my latest bad poker? I'm gonna tell you my last poker bad beat was the last time I played poker in Vegas. Wasn't the last time I went to Vegas. It was when I went for a friend's birthday 2 years ago. Didn't win much all trip there, and that was when they were starting to change the odds on all the table games and stuff like that. So even if I did win, it wasn't a whole lot more. You know what I mean? And plus, they started nickel and diming you everywhere. So even the money I came with, I ended up with a lot less because that ended up going towards all these different stupid service fees. In any event, I still had some left to gamble with. I had some money, but I had some. I always take a certain amount to gamble with. And no more. So I decided, I found a poker room, I think it was at Caesars. And I sit down there and I play poker. And I'm not doing well. But it was like the only one that was open at the time. So I was not doing well. But I finally caught some good cards. And I caught a full house. Boy, oh boy. 3s full of 4s, I caught a full house. Which means I had 3 3s and 2 4s as the Texas Hold'em cards were being dealt. And I went all in. I got it. Okay. Things are finally coming up Millhouse. And the guy who went in with me, against me, he had 4s full of 3s. Which meant that while I had 3 3s and 2 4s, he had 3 4s and 2 3s. Which meant his hand was just a little bit, literally just a little bit, better than mine. And I played it as well as you're supposed to play it, by the book. And I still lost to luck. And everyone at the table, including the guy who beat me, was like, oh, he felt bad for beating me. And you never feel bad for beating somebody at poker. He felt bad for beating me. Because it was that bad a beat. Happens all the time, Ben Pierce. So, what do you think is going to... Mike is right. What do you think is going to happen against the pros? But Mike is also right, and he introduces our boy to the Ice Queen herself, Nessa. And this is a great scene for Nessa. Maybe it's because I'm starved for Nessa because we didn't get much of her last episode. But this is a great scene for Nessa because she's going to teach Ben Pierce the finer points of tells, the finer points of human behavior. And I've seen a bunch of stuff in terms of human behavior playing on poker. I haven't even played on that many poker tables. You know what I mean? I've played on a handful, maybe, a little bit more than a handful. I don't know, a few more than a handful poker games. But there's stuff that you should know. And even if you watch poker, you can pick. He should have been able to watch it. Poker was on cable television at this time. He should have been able to watch it. That's how they get these names on here. You know who these guys are. This is the genesis of poker becoming big. He should have been able to see it. In any event, Nessa talks to him about Phil Ivey, who is giving some different poker tells. And Phil Ivey is not a good actor. And I can tell you why Phil Ivey is not a good actor, because he's giving these tells as if he's an amateur and the look away and all this other stuff about whether he picks up the flush or not.
Try me. Pick a table. Four-seat just made his hand. Can tell by the freeze. Player gets down to monster hand. His breathing inadvertently stops for just a second. Could just have a flush, but I'm guessing straight flush. Yep, definitely the straight flush. There's the look away. Player holding the nuts will often glance away from the table, an unconscious effort to appear nonchalant. Freeze gave me the flush. Look away tells me it's even better.
On the hand that Nessa is talking about. Now, here's the thing about Phil Ivey. Phil Ivey is an ice. He's an ice. He does not. There's Phil Ivey has no tells whatsoever. Maybe I don't even talk. The best tells are often how people play, as in the percentage they put into the pot, how much they put into the pot, etc. I don't even think Phil Ivey has much in terms of that. Like Phil Ivey's, he doesn't have tells. He's not a talkative player. He's very stone cold. He doesn't do anything. And then we see one of the other Phils. I think his name was Phil. He was the host of Celebrity Poker Showdown. One of the hosts of Celebrity Poker Showdown, so I recognize him for sure. And Phil Ivey is doing the shaky hand on the thing. Nessa's giving some cursory poker tips, which aren't terrible, especially for the time. But in real life, poker's evolved a little bit since then. And we keep seeing Chris Jesus Ferguson. Like, they refuse to take the cameras off of him. Because he's just that camera ready. In any event, we cut back to the surveillance room, and Ed and Danny are looking over the surveillance tapes of the night that Vera disappears. And they see the waiter bringing Vera her martini on a service cart.
Hold it. Run that waiter back on 118. Run him back again. Okay. Run back 118 at the same time the night before she disappeared. Now find that waiter.
And again, Danny is sitting down. Ed is definitely on and on this episode. Danny's not losing it, but Ed is on top of this all episode long. We cut back to the Bellicera, and Mike and Ben are going to try to put some of the lessons that they learned from Nessa into the practice. Whether it's the look away, the stare down. The stare down is supposed to be a clear sign that you don't have anything. It's the oldest trick in the book, a sign of intimidation, according to Nessa. I've stared down before, and I've had it. That's not necessarily a lack of intimidation. Sometimes you're actually just trying to figure out if the person has anything or not. Like, you're staring them down to see if they break, to see if you can find, because if you may not have seen any other tells before. It's not Nessa's advice isn't one-to-one. In any event, they're talking to these Elvis impersonators because there just happens to be an Elvis convention in town that weekend, and they're trying to see which of the Elvis impersonators actually met Elvis before he disappeared. He didn't. Elvis is still alive. Elvis Leo, baby. Before we get too far into it, as you're watching this on all aspects, musical cue again, the song you're listening to is Long Tall Legs by Johnny Beretta and Roy Benz. Long Tall Legs. In any event, they're trying to find which Elvis never met Elvis, which Elvis impersonator never met Elvis. All of them are... I like the last two. The last two stories are really good. The first guy story is not particularly good, and I think that helps to let people think that, or let us as the audience know that he was the one that was lying. Plus, he would have been like 8 in 1977 when he says that he met Elvis. So Mike tells Ben that they have a little bit more to go over. We then cut to the interrogation. This is the interrogation of the episode. In this scene, we get to see the sassy interrogation, and I love this scene right here. This scene is terrific. Loretta should have won herself an Emmy for this. She pours her heart out about the driven ambition. She's just too ambitious as the cameras pick up her stealing the George W. Swizzle and then celebrating as she walks away.
It's all right here on the videotape. Is that you?
Could be.
Did she not know that there would be cameras, that there are cameras everywhere in Vegas? Everywhere in Vegas? I don't know. She didn't scout this thing out at all. And we see and again, we see Mary's facial expressions. They are terrific. Mary's facial expressions are right up there with Kevin McDonald's vocal expression of what's happening in these scenes. But give it to Loretta. Like, this is her time to shine. This is I give her all the Emmys because this is terrific. This is just go to it. Go to it.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to win so bad. I'm just too driven, too ambitious.
Loretta, I'm going to have to ask you to surrender your Sassy membership card. Yes, I'm afraid so.
Fine. All those years collecting swizzle sticks. The single-minded focus and abandon. It's like I've been in prison. A prison where the bars are made of swizzle sticks. But now, I'm free.
And then Loretta, being the woman of passion that we clearly know her to be, as she gives up her Sassy membership card and is about to leave, she thanks Danny in the only way she knows how for freeing her from this prison of bars made of swizzle sticks. She's free. How's she gonna thank Danny?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. That's good. You're welcome.
It's beautiful. It's terrific. It's terrific. And Mary's not jealous. She knows. Listen, Mary's not jealous because she knows the passion that lies inside of Loretta. Danny, don't knock it. You know what I mean? There's still probably a couple days left on her trip. All I'm saying is all I'm saying. Hold on a second. Let's get a new deck in here and we'll be right back. If you're ready to find your fitness family focused on being knowledgeable, being open-hearted, getting results, and having an elevated experience, then you're ready for KORE. That's Core Nutrition Fitness. The NASM certified personal trainers at Core cater to all fitness levels, ages, and body types. Whether it's the Gluteus Maximus and Queen Camp classes for the ladies, or the Minute Monday weight training for everyone. If you're in the Los Angeles area and ready to build better health and great friendships, the Core Fitness family is the place for you. Go to CoreNutritionFitness.com now for details. That's KORE NutritionFitness.com. Anyway, Mike and Pierce go through that hallway again. They light it differently. They put a lot of showgirls in there. They put a curtain up to try to and put more people back there to make it seem like it's backstage, but it's that hallway. And this scene, they try to ask the dancers how old they are. They both say they're 22, and boy, wouldn't you know it, it is both of them are lying. Both of them are definitely lying, and you could tell by how they answer the question that both of them are absolutely lying. So now Mike has a little bit more confidence in Ben Pierce that he might be able to actually pull this off at that tournament or that game at the Palms. Which, by the way, I guess I don't think he didn't say what kind of game it was. Maybe it's a tournament game. Maybe it's a cash game. If it's a cash game, he could get up at any time. Anyway, in any event, Ed goes and finds the waiter who brought the drink to Vera's room, and he questions him. And I love this scene because Ed tells the kid, he's like,
let's just say I called down here to the bar and I wanted a cocktail sent up to my office. What exactly would you do?
Is this a trick question? Because I know employees aren't supposed to drink on the job, and Mr. DeLine...
No, I understand. But the truth is, if I called for a cocktail, you for sure would bring it up to my office.
And he corners this kid, and this kid is clearly... You can see the glassiness in his eyes. This kid, he might be 21 years old. Like, he might be 21 years old. And he is in over his head against Ed's line of questioning. And he breaks immediately. He says that he didn't get paid for it. He loves her. And so we cut straight to Vera. And this scene is great. As we cut to the scene, we hear production music through all incarnations of this scene. And we get to see Vera for the first time up close, and she talks for the first time up close. Let's talk about Vera. She is played by none other than the Trek legend, Nana Visitor, ladies and gentlemen. Her first role. We got to give Nana Visitor her flowers. We don't give nobody else on this episode their flowers. We got to give Nana Visitor because I'm a Trekkie. So her first credit, One Life to Live. One Life to Live. She played Georgina Whitman number 2 in 1982. That's her for these soap opera actors. They love them. She then did Ryan's Hope for 79 episodes. Look at that. Alongside fellow Trek legend Kate Mulgrew. She, of course, is known. You've seen her. If you go back and you watch old 90s stuff, you'll see Nana Visitor on a whole bunch of stuff. L.A. Law, Matlock, etc. But she is most well known as Kira Nerys from Star Trek Deep Space Nine and all the connecting Star Trek media. She also did 12 episodes of Family Guy. The latest thing you can see her in is Friends of Sophia in 2024 and 6 Feet Apart, which is in post-production right now. She is such a Trekkie legend. She's got an asteroid named after her, don't you know? She is such a Trekkie legend, she gave birth to her child while filming an episode of Deep Space Nine, don't you know? A child conceived with fellow co-star Dr. Bashir, don't you know? And she's only one of a couple of dozen actors who've done both Star Trek and Doctor Who. That's geek legendary status right there. That's Nana Visitor right there. Nana Visitor, as she gets a visitor, Ed, the line, is immediately shocked. And the facial expressions that she gives are terrific. The closest I can give Nana Visitor, for anybody who doesn't know, is Didi Khan. This scene looks, she has a lot of the facial expressions and even some of the intonation and body movements of Didi Khan. And both are terrific. I love both of them in everything I've seen them in. And Vera here immediately just pours her heart out to Ed. Things have been going bad between her and Vanko for a while, and she just wanted to get away for a while. She doesn't really love this Billy kid, the one who got the hotel room and confessed himself to Ed. So much like Vanko, who's not really that in love with Olga, she's not really that in love with Billy, she really still loves Vanko. And she wanted to try to give up the Vegas thing, but she knew she'd be a pariah.
Things haven't been good between Vanko and me for a long time, but if I divorced him, I would be the most hated person in Las Vegas, a marked traitor like, Demi Moore in that movie about the Pilgrims.
The Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Yeah, but I think it was Robert Duvall.
Yeah, right, sorry.
She just wanted to get away for a while. She just wanted to clear her head. She just wanted to clear her head of all the Vegas excess.
But who am I kidding? I'm a girl from Jersey, for God's sakes, I love excess. And I love Vanko.
Which was certainly true for Jersey girls in that era. Certainly true. But in any event, she is just beside herself. She can't really think straight. She said she wanted a simple life, but she doesn't. Will Vanko ever forgive her? Let's see. As Mike and Ben Pierce go to the game, one thing I do want to note here is that even though they look like they are deep on like an elevator, like close, like probably on the floor of Pierce's room, they still have people walking back and forth, and you can still hear the faint sound of the casino in the background, even though it does not look like they're on the lobby floor where you would still be able to hear the sounds of the casino. Again, I really think that there are just some elements in the soundtrack that either were embedded or were added later to cover up something else. I'm not sure, but again, this goes back even a few episodes where you shouldn't really hear sounds of the casino, but you still do for no reason. In any event, Mike gives Ben the exposition of why Mike doesn't play.
When I moved back to Vegas, I played poker a lot. I loved it. The sweet feeling, catching a winning hand, power, the rush, it was addictive. At first it was, anyway, when I was winning. Then I started losing, going on tilt, forgetting the numbers, just playing crazy, chasing that sweetness. And it got to a point where I realized if I didn't stop then and there, I might never be able to. So, I quit playing poker.
Because Mike has an addiction. And I got to tell you, in watching Ben Pierce and how he was talking to Mike and the couple of scenes in Ben's hotel room, I think Ben has an addiction too. And Mike's addiction to playing and to gambling will come back later. We will see and hear this a couple of times later. And there's even a connection to somebody else that's close to Mike. Do you know who I'm talking about? Who am I talking about? Hit me up on Twitter at the Podecito and tell me who I'm talking about, who's also close to Mike, who also has a gambling addiction. Think you know? I wish I had like a prize to give away. That would be cool. But if you my congratulations is the prize that you would get. In any event, I keep saying in any event. Take a shot every time I say in any event, and I won't say it right now. Ambrose comes into the game, and he immediately starts intimidating our boy, Ben Pierce, who is, by the way, also, again, playing with Jesus Ferguson. Again, just the image of this guy at the table gives some sort of view that the director and the producers just couldn't resist. And Vanko's on stage, and he's trying the ring trick, and it's not going well. And he shoos Olga away. And Olga, who just not that long ago was looking at him in a way that you don't want a woman to look at you if you're supposedly in love, is deflated and rejected by Vanko on stage in front of people as his tricks are not going well. So they bring the pyramid out again, and there's Vera. Vera's back. And Olga walks and stumbles and runs off stage. And Vera kisses Vanko, and Vanko and Vera are back together. And Sam is super excited. And she asks Ed, who's sitting there watching the show,
What happened?
I took care of it.
You don't know how he makes her disappear, do you?
You know, when she's laying there,
Right.
and he first makes her levitate.
Right.
And then when he takes the... I'm sorry.
Why, what?
No, I forgot. I'm sorry. I was sworn to secrecy. I'm sorry.
And that's a cool little moment of connection between those two as well. I do like seeing that, and the genuine smile on James Caan's face is fantastic for that little scene. We haven't seen much of Sam in this episode, but the little bit we saw was pretty good. Ambrose with kings full of eights, and Pierce has to throw it all in as we look over Jesus Ferguson's shoulder again, and Pierce is losing it, and he is going into complete and total meltdown mode. Stick to computers, Pierce. Stay away, or if you're gonna do this, make it low stakes, buddy. make it low stakes, my friend. Pierce leaves. The stakes are entirely too high. Mike has to sub. Mike is going in for it. He's going to play for Pierce. And we cut to commercials. So knowing about Mike's past and Mike's addiction, that raises the stakes. And then we already knew how important this game was. But it was one of those situations where Mike had to step in. And Mike is... We played a few hands, right? Chips have been stacked up, and Pierce is gone. Ambrose is looking pretty good. Mike is looking okay. Mike checks the cards, and now we got a showdown between Ambrose and Mike. And Ambrose goes all in, pushes somebody else out, which is, by the way, another strategy of poker. I've been at that table before, and look, if it's a cash game, somebody just keeps bullying, get your winnings and get up and leave. But in any event, Mike, I said it again, Mike has to figure out whether Ambrose is bluffing or whether Ambrose really has it. And he doesn't think Ambrose really has it. And that's another, you got to figure out, does the guy next to you have it or not? Are they bluff? This is the game. They have it or not? Are they bluffing or not? And Ambrose has 2-7 offsuit, which is, I'm going to stop right here, which is one of the worst hands to have in Texas Hold'em. Because the odds of you winning with that are super-de-duper low. Super-de-duper low. Because you need, to get it straight, you need 4 cards in a row. 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't have a flush. It's what a lot of players, if they get 2-7 off, that's a lot of players. This is an automatic muck. That's just an automatic. You throw it back. Mike had King Queen offsuit, and he clearly wins. And Ambrose says 40 grand of that is mine. And Ed, who has walked in now and seen that showdown go down, is intimidating Ambrose. He's bullying Ambrose.
40 grand of that is mine. Let's have it.
Well, I believe that's 20.
This is a private matter. Nothing to do with the Podecito.
Well, now it's 10. You say another word, it's 5. Oh, good. Mike paid his germ 10,000.
We don't know what Ed has on Ambrose at this point. We just know that Ambrose, who's been bullying people this entire episode, is stone cold looking away from Ed as Ed whispers in his ear.
Listen, if I ever catch you on one of my people, I'm gonna come after you, and I swear to God, you're gonna wish I had a sledgehammer. Clean up, Mike.
And Ambrose has nothing to say. Ambrose has nothing to say. He takes his 10 grand, and that's the end of it. That's the end of Ambrose. We don't see Ambrose for a while. Maybe. In the event, I said it again. I gotta stop saying that. Ben and Mike say their goodbyes. Mike gives Ben a little bit of a loan until Ben gets back on his feet. And Ed comes in to check on Mike, which is a good thing because of Mike's addiction. He wants to make sure that Mike is okay, that Mike isn't necessarily slipping back. He's checking on him, but he's not pushing. He's just checking. He's just, how are you? Where are you at? How are you feeling? You were just doing it to help out a friend. That's all it was. Okay, and he trusts Mike enough to leave it at that. And that is a cool. That is a nice. There's been a lot of nice Ed scenes in this episode. Ed's connected with the members of the Montecito crew on different levels in this episode. I like it. Ed takes Danny, or is about to take Danny, to the topless pancake spot. And again, Danny is sitting down. So that makes me think that Danny's injury, or Josh's injury, was a lot sooner. So Ed in his leather jackets were really popping back in the early 2000s, tells Danny to bring his Hummer around, and that's Ambrose waiting in the cut for Ed. And as soon as somebody comes out of Ed's Hummer, he gets shot at.
You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. He got me in the leg.
Luckily, Ed's right there, and he fights the gun away from Ambrose, and he starts beating him down. Now, Danny's been hit in the leg. And why has Danny been hit in the leg? Because Josh Duhamel injured his leg playing basketball. So they had to basically add this scene at the last minute and work around Josh Duhamel for this and future episodes for the next couple of months. The only thing that stops Ed from killing Ambrose really is the fact that Ambrose completely passes out and Danny screams and yells bloody murder for Ed to stop or he's going to kill him.
Ed! Stop it! You're gonna kill him! Stop it!
And this is the second time that we've seen so far where Danny had to stop Ed from committing homicide because of somebody else's actions against one of Ed's people. Don't screw with Ed. Danny's in the hospital, and Ed and Danny have this really cool scene where Ed is talking about, hey, why don't we just say that there were like 8 or 9 guys with crowbars since we were the only one there? Huh? Make it 8. And then the rest of the crew comes in. And as you're watching this on the DVD, music cue here at the end, as you're watching it here on the DVD, you will hear some random production music. And if you're watching it on Peacock and Amazon, they actually do something different. They play a song called Flight of the Yellow Birds by Peter Ian Jones and Marcus Lee, which is not a bad song. And as they come in, the rest of the crew, Mary, oh my dear, sweet Mary. The look on her face, the worry on her face for Danny, the first thing she does, how sweet is this? The first thing she does is she plants the sweetest kiss right on his leg. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. All right, D&D shippers, it's 1-1. It's Derry and D&D have 1-1 on this episode. But then, not too long after that, Delinda comes up and whispers something in Danny's ear that we can't hear. There's no audio track for it. We have no idea what it is, but it sounds like something fun, and Danny says, I need to get shot more often. So, all right, D&D shippers, it's 2-1 this episode. Listen, Derry shippers, we were feasting these last few episodes. All right? And there's still something there with Danny. Like, there's still something there. But DD shippers, they've got something going on right now. And the crew all come and congratulate, or not congratulate, but they give their well wishes to Danny. And all the girls go up and give him some kind of acknowledgement and kiss. And even Mike comes up and they have a laugh about Mike coming to do it. And it's just you could tell it's a scene that they picked up at the end because it kind of ends slightly awkwardly with everyone laughing randomly at not a whole lot. But that's the scene. But it's another good scene because it brings together everybody liking each other. It's the scene where everybody in the main crew has that camaraderie and you get to see it. You get to openly see them enjoying each other's company and being friends. And that's going to carry over into their relationships for the rest of the time that we get the main crew on Las Vegas, which is not long enough. It's never long enough. Just like this podcast is never long enough unless you're sitting and trying to edit it, and then it's more than long enough. But in any event, that was episode 10, Dex and Violence. I like this episode. I like the different layers of stories that we get, like I talked about before. We have the super serious, the semi-serious, and then the completely silly. My favorite is probably the completely silly. I don't know who, as I'm recording this, who was chosen as VIP guest stars in this. For my money, it's Loretta. Loretta, that just for that interrogation scene alone, Loretta steals it. Just for that interrogation scene, the bars are made of swizzle sticks. Just give her all the Emmys. Just do it. Just give her all of the Emmys. In terms of music for this episode, I forgot to mention before we go, there are 3 songs in cross-referencing with LasVegas-series.com and the Wayback Machine and another website I use, TuneFind. There are 3 songs that are allegedly on this episode, probably in the original airing, but I couldn't find them on the DVD or the streaming services. One is Can You Feel It by Kid Gloves. Couldn't find that song anywhere. One is Mambaloo by Mo Horizons. I found that song on YouTube. It's a decent song, but it didn't sound like any of the music I heard in any of the recordings I had. And Gopher by Yuma Sumac, YMASUMAC. That allegedly is background music for Casino Floor Crowd Scene. Again, it didn't sound like any of the recordings I found. Maybe it was in the original airing. If you have one of the original airings, great. But if you want to add some extra music that allegedly was in this episode to your playlist, that's them. We have another episode coming up next week. It's called Blood and Sand, episode 11. This is the boxing episode, if you remember that one. I like that episode, too. And I think they probably got some inspiration from Ocean's 11 on that, because one of the key elements of Ocean's 11 is it takes place during a boxing event. I do like that episode. It's going to be an interesting look at quite a few things. And it's one of my favorites because it actually inspired I told you I was a geek. Right. It inspired a fan fiction that I wrote about Las Vegas that I haven't been able to find the text of on LasVegasTheSeries.com on the Wayback Machine, but it was based around Las Vegas and wrestling because they obviously had a ring there, and it also involves a wrestling match between Mary and Delinda. Seemingly over nothing, but realistically over Danny. Thank God the internet isn't always forever. But that's Blood and Sand. That's next week. I appreciate you joining me on this journey this week. I appreciate the support that you've given to the channel, to the podcast. Since then, if you have any other ways of showing support that you can think of, none of them compare to just sharing it. Just sharing it or writing a review. If you're listening to this on whatever podcast platform that you're listening on, write a review to help boost us up a little bit. Share it like I mentioned. And until next week when we talk about Blood and Sand, and hopefully I don't get to find that fiction that I wrote that should be on some file somewhere, but hopefully I don't ever find it, and hopefully I don't find it. If I do, it might be an exclusive to like Patreon or something like that. But until next week, when we talk about Blood and Sand, I appreciate you joining me this week for Dex and Violence. Tell me what you thought about this episode, Dex and Violence. You can reach out to us here on the podcast on all the platforms that you know of. Go to our link tree. That's where you can find us on everywhere. We're on Reddit, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. We're everywhere you can find us, where you probably found the link to this. Thank you for joining us. And in the meantime, the in-between time, till we see you next week, as always, please take care.